All right, thank you very much everyone for being here today at the 2023 Student World Impact Film Festival. We're now going to be having our next speaker and we're very excited to get started. So without further ado, I will share my screen with your presentation and please take it away. Can you also please let me know if you have any video in the presentation?
Yeah, I do. I believe on slide 12.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you. Okay, and take it away.
Okay. Aloha mai kako o ho'ohia o kala ko'inoa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ho'ohia o kala Luna Beamer, or Hie for short. And just in case anyone's curious, Ho'ohia o kala means splendor of the sun. But today I'm going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is authentic representation in mainstream media, and more specifically, Hawaiian representation. Next slide, please. So before we start, I wanted to share a little bit about me. I am an aspiring filmmaker born in Oahu, but originally from Maui, Hawaii. I am a rising sophomore at Columbia University and am double majoring in film and media studies and drama and theater arts. I hope to bring true Hawaiian culture to the big screen. I have always known that I wanted to live in a big city for college and live in an area that would be a significant change from the laid back lifestyle that I'm used to back home in Hawaii. And I'm very ecstatic to be in New York. And I also wanted to mention that the film major at Columbia University, if anyone is thinking of applying, is very theory-based and history-based. And that is why I chose to double major in theater as well, because it gives me good hands-on experience for set design for plays and things like that. But we do have a really good film school that produces well-rounded frames of mind, and I couldn't be happier with my decision. Some of my honors in film include creating a mini documentary for PBS as part of the Student Reporting Labs Academy back in 2021 when I was still in high school. It was called Ko Kako Kuleana, which encouraged respectful practices among tourists, especially because Hawaii's economy is so dependent on the tourism industry. Ko Kako Kuleana translates to everyone's responsibility. I was also fortunate enough to produce and edit a video entitled Waihe'e Virtual Huaka'i for the Maui Huleau Foundation. It's a video on the Waihe'e Ridge Trail, which is just full of rich cultural and historical significance. And this video basically dove into all of that richness. Hawaii, or Waihe'e Virtual Huaka'i, was an informative video of the area. And this piece was featured in the Hawaii International Film Festival Student Showcase. Next slide, please. Outside of film, I also enjoy photography. On the left is my recent publication for Vigor's magazine, May 2023 Black and White edition. My friend Brandon McCoy is modeling there. And funny enough, this photo shoot was actually done in my Columbia dorm. We had set up a black poster board on my door and utilized plastic wrap. On the right is a picture of my friends at the beach in my spare time when I'm not doing anything media-based. I love to go to the beach, surf, dance hula, and explore my island. Next slide, please. So today I broke down my presentation into 3 sections: diversity in film, my story, and the importance of authenticity or authentic representation, and the next steps we can take moving forward. Next slide, please. So, diversity in film. Next slide, please. I invite you to think about some questions before we begin. Why is it important to showcase accurate portrayals of diversity on the big screen? How does availability and exposure play a role into all of this? And if an inaccurate portrayal culture in a movie or TV show is popular and mainstream, how does this frame the way we as an audience perceive this culture in real life? So I wanted to start off with this quote from Michael Morgan at the University of Massachusetts, which answers all of these questions, stating that stories matter. Stories affect how we live our lives, how we see other people, and how we think about ourselves. Stories greatly influence and manipulate our perceptions of the world, whether we are aware of it or not. Next slide, please. So why diversity? Diversity in film and correct representation enacts positive change, whether that be how one perceives themselves or how they are perceived by others. It also empowers underrepresented communities and individuals. In hindsight, I wish that I had a strong female Hawaiian actor to look up to so that I could see myself in various forms of media that I grew up on. Diversity also transforms one's interactions with others as well within their daily lives, making them more culturally receptive, accepting, and overall attaining a broader and global perspective. I also invite you to think of some examples of great representation in mainstream media and keep these in the back of your minds. Next slide, please. So these are just some broader, memorable moments that come to mind for me in regards to pop culture, film, and TV for diversity and representation. First, we have Chloe Zhao being the second woman and first woman of color to win Best Director at the Academy Awards for her Western film Nomadland, premiering in 2020. I am also an Asian filmmaker, so this is especially inspiring to me. Second, we have Loki from Marvel, where the title character came out as bisexual. Third, we have Del Toro, who is the first filmmaker to win Academy Awards for Best Director, Best Picture, and Best Animated Feature for his works of The Shape of Water and Pinocchio, respectively. Lastly, in 2021, Pixar Animation Studios came out with a casting call explicitly looking for a transgender actor. All of these moments serve to empower and inspire their respective communities, hopefully paving the way for more inclusivity, self-confidence, and positivity in film and media. Next slide, please. So now I want to speak upon memorable moments in pop culture, film, and TV for Hawaii specifically. So as we know, live action Lilo and Stitch is in the works and they're filming on Oahu. In the original work, the filmmakers followed a kumuhula, or a teacher of hula, and their halau, which is a hula group, to observe and copy their hula animation sequences. Thus, in the remake, it was very important for them to remain culturally sensitive and accurate. For the role of Lilo, Hawaii-born Maya Kealoha was cast as the lead. This is especially important because it is Hawaii-born individuals and locals playing people from Hawaii, rather than bringing in outside actors to play roles that they don't know anything about. There are so many films and TV shows that claim to be different and showcase the reality of Hawaii and Hawaiian culture, yet cast non-Hawaiians for these characters and stories. Especially considering the harmful history of the annexation of Hawaii and the effects that still linger to this day, it is so important that only people from Hawaii are telling these Hawaiian stories. Next, Hawaii's very own Auli'i was Disney's first Polynesian princess in the film Moana, I'm sure we're all familiar with. There are some misconceptions to this film, Moana represents a variety of Polynesian cultures, not just Hawaiian culture. And this film is definitely a step in the right direction. However, I feel that marketing could have been a bit better and a bit more informational by explicitly stating that Moana was representative of a mix of Polynesian cultures, rather than filming all of their promo videos in Hawaii, kind of giving off a wrong impression. Next, we have Destin Daniel Cretton, who is a filmmaker from Haiku, Maui. If you look in the photo, you can see a semblance of a lei hanging around his neck. This is a tea leaf lei, which is very important to Hawaiian culture, as royalty once wore these leis to display their status. The tea leaf symbolizes positive blessings and protection. The lei is made by stripping the bone off the leaf, stripping the leaf into long pieces, microwaving it or heating it, and then twisting the soft remains in one direction and flipping it over each other in the other direction. Tea leaf leis are very common and made for most special occasions. Lastly, in the film titled Maui, which was previously entitled Kuleana, they had changed the name, was a locally produced film starring a local cast that was recognized nationwide. This drama and mystery received the Best of Festival Award at the Guam International Film Festival, among many other honors. Next slide, please. So I wanted to end this segment with another quote regarding Shang-Chi's box office success. The actor says, "I'm looking forward to the moment we no longer celebrate firsts. We're celebrating seconds and thirds and fourths." I hope to get to a point where we don't have to look for diversity, that it just kind of happens naturally, but maybe that is just wishful thinking. I invite you to reflect on your personal experiences and to think about how we can relate this quote to misrepresented communities in film and media, other ones, personal ones that you resonate with. Next slide, please. So part 2, my story and the importance of authenticity. Next slide, please. So I had mentioned before that I curated a mini documentary for PBS back in 2021 entitled Ko Kako Kuleana, which means everyone's responsibility. And I hope you enjoy it. While it is not my most recent work, it is especially relevant to my presentation today. And I also think it's cool to look back at one of my first productions and appreciate how far I've come. So if we can play the video now.
I am a Kanaka Maoli, a native to this land. And my role, I feel, as a Kanaka, as any Kanaka, is that I have a kuleana, a responsibility to this aina, our land, our lahui, and our culture and values. Aloha is definitely a core value of our culture and should be a core value for all of us.
Aloha is something that cannot just be defined into one word or a sentence because it is a very broad word. To me, aloha means love, and it's sharing what comes from your na'au and what you've been taught through your lahui.
A lot of people come to Hawaii, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Just because you're on vacation doesn't mean that our roads and laws are on vacation as well. You would be amazed at how many people actually trash our beaches. You trash the beach, pick up your opala, pick up your rubbish. I mean, as simple as that. We're a whole ecosystem here, and I see a lot of people going to places where they don't belong. Simply said, they have a disregard for no trespassing signs.
A lot of tourists that come here Our pride is aloha, and we show the people who come here aloha, but I think it's taken for granted a lot of the times because they think it's a given, but in reality, you have to show aloha to be given aloha. When you're coming here to visit, you're not a resident, you're a visitor. So you should respect the people that are from here that are trying to educate you, and not that you should know it better or that you know it all.
You know, with us as Kanaka, we have a very strong tie to our land, and to see it be treated with disrespect would be like watching someone disrespecting one of your own, like your child. It hurts. Do research where you're going and learn the people's history, because we do have a history. I think people need to come with respect and humility, which is what embodies, you know, the word aloha. I would encourage people to come, but always come with humility, ha'a.
Yeah. So this video is especially important because it begins to debunk the glamorization of Hawaii. Hawaii is currently extremely overrun with tourists, and I wanted to be a little more transparent with the tourism industry, express Hawaiian values, and practices that should be implemented for visitors. Especially now that I am at Columbia University, a lot of people ask me how I feel about tourism. And although I cannot speak for everybody in Hawaii, to me, Hawaii is so beautiful, and I genuinely hope a lot of people get to experience it and come visit. And during COVID-19, when we had no visitors, our economy definitely took a significant hit that took us a long time to recover from. If there was a way to keep disrespectful tourists out of our home, I would employ those methods, but there's not, unfortunately. I truly think that it is just a matter of showcasing kindness to others, understanding you are a visitor, displaying humility and respect toward our land, culture, and values. And this is a contrast to what is normally showcased in media, which are beautiful hotels, lavish luau's that are not completely accurate, and a failure to recognize any of these issues. Or if they are recognized, they're not recognized by people from Hawaii. They are non-Hawaiians telling these stories, and that is just not okay. So I want to touch upon the harmful repercussions of culture appropriation or misrepresentation in media. The qualities in a movie's portrayal are mirrored and expected in real life, and it leads to hurtful generalizations. Moreover, misrepresentation perpetuates hurtful stereotypes. In a lot of movies, Hawaiians or locals are often depicted as side characters used for a comedic break, ones that are lesser than, slow, which are all untrue stereotypes. And because of these things, I have had people tell me that my English is very good. I've also had people ask me if I had running water and electricity, if I lived in a grass hut, and if I rode a dolphin to school, which was just wild. But historically, Hawaiians are actually extremely smart. The Iolani Palace, which was the palace of Hawaii back when we were a monarch, when we had monarchy, actually had running water and electricity before the White House. Moreover, Polynesians are incredible wayfinders. By 2009, one of the most iconic voyaging canoes called the Hokulea completed voyages to Micronesia, Polynesia, Japan, Canada, and the US, all using ancient wayfinding techniques and celestial navigation. And with the absence of modern technology in those voyages, it goes to show the deep-rooted role that history and ancient practices still play even in modern times. Next slide, please. Some wrongful depictions that I've noticed in mainstream media is that Hawaiian culture is merely grass skirts and coconut bras. In reality, Hawaiian culture is so much more than this. It is filled with numerous indigenous birds, plants, and more. The rich legends and myths are filled with important values and life lessons, accompanied with multiple gods and goddesses. One of my favorite examples of this is the story of the naupaka flower, which is a flower that grows in the bushes along the shoreline and atop mountains. It looks like half a flower. And when Princess Naupaka follows for a common man, Pele, the goddess of volcanoes, fire, and wind, becomes overtaken with jealousy and uses her power to divide the pair. As they are fleeing for their lives, Naupaka takes a flower from her hair, breaks it in half, and gives it to Kaui as he runs to the ocean and she flees to the mountains. The Naupaka flower is a representation of them, two flowers torn apart that when joined together look like the same flower. This is an important lesson against discrimination and how that always leads to hurt, that division brings pain. In this case, Pele is a role model of what not to do. And I love that in my culture, one of the most powerful deities is a woman. The next wrongful depiction is that hula is an exotica for tourists to enjoy. Hula is a way of communication, of passing down stories, preserving the language. As you may or may not know, Hawaii was a sovereign nation, and that was annexed illegally by the US. Hula, Hawaiian language, was banned, practicing it was punishable, and English was forcibly taught. Today, many companies gain profits from incorrect versions of hula and Hawaiian culture, which is a salt in the wound. Another wrongful depiction is non-Hawaiian actors playing Hawaiians, which leads to mispronunciations of Olelo Hawaii or Hawaiian language. I don't know if you noticed, but throughout the duration of this presentation, I've said either Hawaii or Hawaii, which are two correct versions, and I have not said Hawaii. Another common mispronunciation is ukulele. It's actually ukulele. And finally, there's an abundance of incorrect historical depictions. As an alternative, like the story of Princess Naupaka that I provided, Native Hawaiian mo'olelo or stories should be utilized in media. They're just so rich and so interesting. They would make great narratives. And mo'olelo is passed through generations and is extremely important. So you would have the approval from Natives and Hawaiians. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about some Hawaiian values, some of which are mentioned in my video, Ko Kako Kuleana, and are absent from mainstream depictions of Hawaii. Aloha means love, hello and goodbye. However, it encompasses many things. It is a way of carrying yourself with kindness, harmony, and spirit. It is the ultimate way of living. Ha'a means humility, to be expressed with modesty, understanding that we are servants to the land and it is our responsibility to leave it better than we had found it. Lastly, we have lokahi, which means unity, to be expressed with harmony, showcasing love for community and connections. Hawaii is such a tight-knit community and everybody knows everybody. Hawaii is so special, and especially with the people who live in it. There are other people surrounding you with the same mindset in Hawaii to give back to the community, to be involved, to be indebted. And it's hard to imagine that there's a place like that anywhere else. And it's very hard to articulate for those who haven't lived there. Note that these are just some of the many Hawaiian values that we strive to live by. There's also akahai, which is kindness as expressed with tenderness. Olu, which is to be agreeable, expressed with pleasantness. Ahonui, which is patience, to be expressed with perseverance. Again, these are just some of the many. Next slide, please. So I wanted to touch upon my personal experiences a little bit more. I have experienced firsthand the catastrophic effects of wrongful depictions of diversity in film and TV and media. And it is extremely difficult to feel like I have to stand up for myself and my identity on a daily basis. First off, we have Hawaiian themed parties. These are incorrect and harmful portrayals of Hawaiian culture, and it's just absolutely not okay. Dressing up like a Native American or blackfishing, it's the same thing as dressing up like a Hawaiian and having these Hawaiian themed parties. We've just normalized them so much, it doesn't seem as significant, but it is. And it's hurtful to Native Hawaiians who have such a rich culture that I've partially shared with you today. Again, there's just a lot of overall misconceptions about Hawaii due to the lack of available and accurate information in media, or the failure to look for accurate depictions. There are many websites, such as Bishop Museum website or Hawaii.com, that can be utilized to find accurate sources of information. Once more, I've also just gotten a lot of ignorant questions, which can lead to self-identity and confidence issues, as I have experienced firsthand. In the late 1800s, many immigrants of all different languages immigrated to Hawaii to work in the sugar plantations. These included Japanese, Chinese, and Filipino individuals, among many others. This is why Hawaii remains extremely diverse. And personally, I am 6 ethnicities, and being that mixed is completely normal back home. However, because of what I look like and the lack of accurate representation in media and lack of experience with Pacific Islanders, people in New York have just come up to me and asked or guessed my ethnicity without any regard for my name, talking to me beforehand. I actually had a group of guys bet on what ethnicity I was and pass around money as I was still standing in front of them, which was really strange. But this goes on to my next point, that these racial assumptions, which stem from little experience with Pacific Islanders, is dehumanizing. I had always known that I was a minority because I never saw myself in media growing up, but it wasn't until I came to New York that I actually experienced it firsthand. I felt less like a person and more like an animal in the zoo, with the way they were examining me. And it was very strange and unlike anything I had experienced before. I had also previously mentioned about someone exclaiming that my English was really good. There is something called Pidgin that is spoken back home. Pidgin is a language deriving from the sugar plantation days, which is when people immigrated to work on the sugar plantations, where a mix of cultures and origins were created a language barrier between these individuals. And thus Pidgin, or Hawaiian Creole English, was born. It kind of sounds like a broken version of English, but it has a little bit of a different sentence structure, and it has a culmination of Hawaiian, Japanese, Chinese, and Filipino terms, among many other things. I am surrounded by Hawaiian Creole English back home, and a lot of people in Hawaii will unconsciously switch from regular English to Hawaiian Creole English in one way or another. And so saying that my English is not good is not a compliment. I spoke English my entire life, and we are just used to different variations of it. Next slide, please. So moving forward, what we can do to change representation in film and media. We can encourage casting directors to hire Hawaiians and Hawaii-born locals for these roles and employ local directors and writers to tell these stories in the name of culture accuracy. I believe this, with also an effort to be more receptive to Hawaiian culture, will lead to less appropriation, which starts in media, because the way we view things and the way things that are presented to us translates very much into our everyday life. So it is very important. Next slide, please. So some questions that I want to leave with you today include, how does this relate to your own culture and experiences? And do you think that inaccurate portrayals of culture are better than little to no representation at all? And why does misrepresentation frame the way we see the world? Next slide, please. So I just wanted to thank you all so much for your time today, and thank you to SWIFT for giving me the opportunity to share something I am extremely passionate about. I hope you have learned a little bit more about Hawaiian culture and Hawaii in regards to film and TV, and why it is so important to have accurate depictions of culture and race, not only for Hawaii, but for all cultures worldwide. And yeah, are there any questions?
Okay, thank you so much, Hie, for the presentation on such an important topic. I definitely learned a lot myself as well. And it was terrific to have you here at the Student World Impact Film Festival. So thank you very much for your presentation. Now we're going to be moving into the Q&A session. So if you could type questions for Hie in the chat, and then I'll read them out. So it looks like we already have some questions. One question says, oh, this is a hard one, but I love your presentation. What is one of your favorite movies?
Oh gosh, you see, being a film major, I get asked this a lot, and I get judged harshly for my answer, I'm sure all of you know. Film major answer, probably something like Chungking Express by Wong Kar-wai. Love the cinematography in that. Or also something kind of basic like Interstellar or something. But non-film major answer, maybe something like Mean Girls or Grown Ups, something like that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next question is, what is one of the challenges that you encountered in your filmmaking journey, and how did you approach solving it?
I think, especially coming to Colombia, I did not realize that the film major was very theory and history based. And so I felt that it was very hard for me to get my foot in the door, especially because a lot of the filmmaking clubs here, they hire their friends before anything else. So there's not really significant roles that are open to people who don't have pre-established connections. And I think resolving that just was by putting myself out there and not being afraid to reach out to random photographers and videographers that I found on Instagram or whatever, by whatever means, and working on outside projects and really just making opportunities for myself.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now we have a question from Rocio. They say, could you recommend a Hawaiian animated film or short?
I'm not sure about animated, but definitely check out Kuleana, or I think it's called Maui now. They had changed the name. The issue that we're kind of grappling with is that a lot of people who have access to mainstream media and all of that, they just come to Hawaii and they film, and it's super cool. But then they leave. And it's, people like Adam Sandler, he films a bunch of his movies in Hawaii, and a bunch of my friends have met him. Such a cool dude. But yeah, there's not a lot of resources and access for Hawaiian filmmakers to kind of get the ball rolling. So you will notice a little bit of decrease in quality when you look at mainstream movies versus movies locally produced in Hawaii by locals. And that is a problem that we need to fix. But yeah, just want to preface that by saying if you go and decide to watch that movie, Kuleana, it is great. But yeah, we're working on it.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a question, and it says, what types of cameras do you use for making films? Have you used just a phone or more professional equipment?
You definitely don't need a DSLR or a Canon or anything to make a film. I've used my iPhone for the longest time, but I do now have a DSLR, and I also have a little camcorder. And yeah, I mainly use my DSLR. But camera quality, camera equipment does not equate to a good video. You really have to practice your cinematography, practice, your framing, rule of thirds, leading lines, all of that stuff. And you can make a good movie on your phone. It's not limiting. You don't have to buy an expensive camera because it is very expensive.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Wonderful advice. Next, we have a question, and it says, could you speak about some of the film theory courses that you've taken at Columbia University, and which ones have been your favorite?
Definitely. I have taken cinema history from 1930s to 1960s, and that was really interesting for me. I will admit it did get a little repetitive after a while because that time period marks the move or transition into sound cinema. So there were a lot of mistakes in early movies, obviously, a lot of white noise. You could see the mics in a lot of the shots. So I kind of it took a while to get used to the white noise. I will admit it was a little bit irritating at first. But once you appreciate that, I think it's a great course. It's so good. My favorite one has to be Cinema History 4 that I took, which was 1990s to present day. And we had watched like Jurassic Park and Chungking Express. We also watched Fallen Angels by Wong Kar-wai. And it's very interesting to think about these films that I had, grown up seeing in an academic context and really pulling apart the cinematography and the lighting, especially in Wong Kar-wai. His lighting and cinematography is amazing. The way he, not necessarily glamorizes certain things, but he can take just an average shot of someone eating at a diner and make it look and pull you in and make it intriguing. And I think once you recognize that, you can implement that into your own filmmaking. And it's a very cool thing to learn and do.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next, we have a comment, I think, from SD Rosenblum. She says, thank you for your presentation. Are you familiar with diversity in Cannes? Each year, shorts are submitted, screened, and awarded from filmmakers having to do specifically with the topic of diversity. Please consider submitting. It's stories like yours that are told. So it's like a nice comment.
I definitely will. I have heard of it, but I hadn't done a lot of research on it, but I definitely will. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Next, we have a question, and it says, apart from the film courses that you've taken at Columbia University, are there other clubs or extra activities on campus with film that you've really enjoyed?
Well, yeah, I was doing some student film sets through Columbia University Film Productions, which is the film production club on campus. Like I said, it can be a little cliquey at times, but you really just have to get in with the people. But I personally really like working with like indie bands and outside organizations, which can also be found through Columbia University Film Productions and their newsletter that they put out. That's how I found some of my opportunities. But I got to work with some like punk rock bands in Brooklyn through CUFP. And I really, really love taking my skills outside of Columbia. I think it's really cool and it makes me feel like an adult.
Yeah, thank you, Hie. Next, we have a question. It says, hi, I love your presentation. My question is, what steps can we take as filmmakers to get more incredible stories like yours published in mainstream media?
Oh, I'm actually not sure. I think it's a matter of because there is a demand, especially for Hawaii. People want to learn and people want to know about these stories, but it's there's not locals on the production team. And I think that's the first step is encouraging big production studios to, instead of going for names in the industry, maybe try and employing locals and Native Hawaiians who are interested in telling their story just as much as I am into their work. And I think that's the first step.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next, we have a question, and it says, thank you very much for your presentation. During your presentation, I learned a lot about Hawaiian culture, and now I want to learn even more. Where can I learn more, or what can I do to learn more about Hawaiian culture?
Yeah, there's a lot of different resources you can turn to. There are a bunch of like museum websites that you can check out to learn about the culture. Um, there's also something called vehevehe.org, which you can learn about the language. It's kind of like a Hawaiian dictionary. There's also a lot of videos um, on like Hawaiian culture on the Hokulea that if you just do a simple search, it will pop up. But as far as specific places, you could probably look at just make sure it's based in Hawaii, and it'll usually have a link, a hyperlink or something to a bunch of stuff. It's very accessible. Yeah.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you. Next, we have a question which says, I'm currently a high school student. Could you talk more about your student or your experience as a high school student and creating films?
Definitely. So my high school, I went to Maui High School. It had a very good film program, and that's the reason why I went to that particular high school. And so I was able to get the PBS workshop and the working on the Maui Huliao Foundation through my high school. And it's also where I learned a lot of cinematography techniques and things like that. I think with filmmaking as a high school student, you definitely have to account for budget and time and resources. You know, you can't really drive freshman, sophomore year, really. Um, but there's a lot of things that you can do just in your home. Again, it doesn't have to be a pretty set, doesn't have to be a pretty camera. You just have to be creative and willing to think outside the box. And I think you can create really cool pieces. Some of the best little films that I have seen were created by some of my friends during COVID, and it was just filmed in their house. Because they were bored, they decided to create a short film, and they were just telling stories about, you know, their Filipino heritage from their house. And I think it's very doable to, you know, accommodate for all of the things that, you know, maybe a high school student will not have access to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Looks like we have time for just one more question. The next question says, I liked your presentation, and it looks like you're very, very talented with your film and craft. What are your aspirations for the future in film?
I definitely want to go into film directing or director of photography, DP. I'm also thinking of screenwriting, just not producing. I'm not organized enough for that. But any other creative aspect behind the scenes, I really just want to implement my voice of being a native Hawaiian into the works that I put out in however small manner. Maybe it's just, you know, showcasing kindness, because that is what Hawaiian culture is all about when I, you know, meet different people and things like that. And, you know, however way I can, I just try to live by and implement the values that I grew up on.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Tia. Okay, so with that, we're going to conclude our speaker session today with TA from Columbia University. Wonderful having you here today at the 2023 Student World Impact Film Festival. And thank you very much again for speaking on such an important topic. And it was terrific to have you here today.